All right, 2 minutes. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Let me put a spot on my beautiful guests. um, I'm going to make a short introduction so that we just jump right into the amazing content that we have today. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is a by invitation only event, so you're very special and you have been selected specifically to be here. This is the first of a series of webinars that Powerling is organizing. We have other activities that we will be talking about at the end. I'm Fabiano Cid, the Chief Solutions Officer at Powerling, and I have some amazing industry leaders here with me. Um, Let me set the stage. You know, we're talking about global content in the AI era today. Who is building the guardrails? And I think, not going to send any spoilers, I was about to, but before we go into this, let me introduce, well, I will not introduce. In March, we started this series called The Women Tell Their Stories to celebrate Women's Month. So instead of my making the introduction, I will let them tell the stories. Teresa, tell your story.
Hi, everyone. I think I know some of the people in the chat, so nice to see those of you that I know and to see new faces as well. I am Teresa. I am originally from Seville. I am now the localization, so senior manager localization and internationalization at Malt. I have been a little bit all over the place around Europe, and now I'm working for Malt, although I've worked for other companies before in different roles. So I've touched a little bit of everything. And the reason why I'm here today is because I am a professional pestering, professional pesterer. So I saw a project that I thought was very promising for my company a few years ago, and I pestered my company until it actually happened. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about that project and how exciting it was for me, and hoping to also entice you to join similar projects in your own companies and roles.
Thank you, Teresa. Giselle.
I love that intro because, fellow pesterer, I always tell everyone I'm a schemer. So I have many schemes across many different things. And that is how I tell my boss any day I have a new scheme. And she's like, what's going on now? So hi, everyone. I am Giselle Tran. I'm from San Jose, California. And I run the language experience and technology team at Sage, working on our product, Sage Intact, which is a cloud financials product. Think one step above QuickBooks if you're familiar with that for medium businesses. For my role, my team actually handles more than localization. Localization is an aspect of what we do, but we handle the authoring tools and experience and workflows there, the localization of all the content that the authors create and the content creators create, deployments, web hosting, analytics and feedback. Parts of my team deliver product messaging, and a lot of someone on my team is also handling conversational experiences in AI right now too. So we do a lot, and hence a lot of schemes and a lot of different ideas and a lot of ideas about how everything is connected and always coming together. So I had joined Fabiano in October last year at a boardroom rehearsal like this, and I have grown a lot because of that experience. So I wanted to come and share what I've learned since then as well.
We'll get there. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Before we do, thank you, Giselle. Alison, you are one of the reasons why this is happening. So tell us about you. Tell us your story.
Okay, short version. I'm principal analyst with CSA Research. I started my career way back in the days of the original startups. And I'm not talking about the dot-com era. I'm talking about the days when Windows only had one window. But I've, throughout my career, I've worked with many different companies, but I spent a very long time at a large high-tech company, designing, implementing, operating, running the company's centralized translation management architecture. I've also spent time at a couple of language technology and services companies, but since 2018, I've been with CSA Research, and we provide data and research and reporting for the whole industry, for all of global content management. And I've recently been involved in a couple of reports about executive messaging, because the way we see things going with AI is that translation and language management is not just at the end of the process anymore. It permeates the entire enterprise, and it needs to be brought up to that executive level. It should always have been there, but it's becoming much more essential right now.
And this is what we will talk about right now, Alison. Since you're here, the reason for this webinar was a recent publication, as we mentioned, two of them. I want you to talk about them, but also I want you to tell us the situation. You know, AI, as language people, we've seen that the language decisions are being replaced. We're being replaced as the decision makers when it comes to language, or they are trying to do it. So do you want to talk about a little bit more about the reports? These are, by the way, this relationship that we've had with CSA Research has been fundamental in our move from a language service provider to a global content solutions partner. So I would like you to talk about the reports and what they represent for the situation today.
Yeah, the two reports in the executive messaging series, well, all about, one is one that you can share with your executives to help bring across the importance of language risk management, so that positioning it in their terms, so that they understand it in terms of business outcomes and what they are concerned about for the enterprise as a whole. And then there's a second report, which is much more tactical. It's the templates for messaging or for information that localization leaders can use to tailor their own communications with executives, with stakeholders, with allies within the company to get their buy-in. And it's really become so important, because we've seen organizations where somebody at the top of the company has had the brilliant idea that AI can now do everything and they don't need the localization team anymore. Some organizations took that path, got rid of their localization team, and then a few months later had to figure out, well, really, we do need these experts, we need to bring them back. But in the meantime, had lost a lot of institutional knowledge. And so they're really starting again from scratch, but in a different way. So making sure that folks at the top of the company really understand where AI can be very helpful and where it can introduce risks that need controlling, mitigating, evaluating, and being built into the whole enterprise infrastructure.
Because you also mentioned, Alison, in the reports that, you know, translating today is very easy. Every tool out there has a translate button that made it accessible to everyone in the company.
Yeah.
But it's the language is only part of the issue, because once you start translating and you don't have the people who know what they're doing and who know the risks, you run into governance risk, you run into compliance jeopardy, you run into brand liability. These are the things that we are not talking about, but we know what they are. Do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, what it's done is it's made everybody think that language is easy, that you just press that button, but it can be completely different in the quality that you get from English to Spanish to, say, Korean to Hungarian. And if the organization does not have that expertise and knowledge, nobody will be pointing out the fact that there is a risk being introduced until something happens and something goes wrong, at which point there will be a panic. There's also risks involved in using open access large language models or chatbots. You don't know where your data is going. You don't know where your data is being stored. The localization teams have built up years of data and linguistic data and terminology and style information that should be continually used to guide those automated processes. And then there's situations where you cannot rely on AI and automation to do the right thing. For example, if you're translating or providing content in different languages around medicines or safety information, and if it gets something wrong, just one single word can affect somebody's life very significantly.
Giselle, sorry, Giselle, you represent the large corporation, the large enterprise here with several layers of decision-making process. Who is making language decisions at Sage?
Well, everyone wants to make their own language decisions. We have a decentralized model at Sage for a lot of different reasons. And every team wants to figure out a way to use the tool, the translate in your tool button, you know, and click that. And the engineering team says it speaks French. Why can't we launch it? And the usual suspects happen along the way. So in my opinion, that hasn't really changed, especially since machine translation has been out and everything like this. It's only accelerated, like Alison was saying, what people think is good and all of that sort of stuff. But I continue to find people come back to me and my team because they don't know, for example, what does good mean, or they don't have like the style guide information or the terminology information, or delta detection is still a hard thing for people. Like they don't want to keep retranslating the same thing. And I still see them copy and paste into an engine and out of an engine into another doc, and like really silly problems. So in a lot of ways, even when language decisions are, it seems more accessible. A lot of the automation and like scalability that I see language teams have at enterprise companies is real bread and butter for the team there. And especially when you pair that with like some of the quality metrics and the tuning and the fine-tuned workflows per departments, it becomes more and more valuable. And teams usually come to us and say, wow, you've really invested in this and you figured a lot of things out. We're like, yeah, we would like to help you. It would be cool if we could help you more. So it depends on which team and what they're up to and how connected we are to them.
Thank you, Giselle. Teresa, you took over all the decisions around language and said, do not touch it. I own this. Do you still own the language decisions at Malt?
I have to say that so for me, there is like a difference between language and market, because you could enter different markets with the same language, and that's a difference I want to make from the beginning. This is not very connected to the project that I was talking about, but I think there are two things that to me feel important that are changing the way in which I work. One is, it is true that there are a lot of people trying to do their own thing. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, in the sense that, do we really want to be policing the way in which people are translating content? Or do we want to provide a strategy, workflows, and tools that are strong enough and, you know, easy to use, so that the teams feel attracted, like Giselle was saying, that they end up coming back to you? Because if it's the first one and you're basically trying to go after people to tell them, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, I kind of feel that we've lost the strategic edge already, and we are just reacting to what people are doing. And to be honest, how important is it? I mean, of course, if it's like the main publication of this year and it's going to be shared on the press, then okay, yeah, maybe you should have been on top of that. But if it's like a lot of very small posts or like an email that they're sending to a specific company, who cares? Like, sure, like go ahead, do it with Gemini. It's okay. Like it's more that. And the other thing that I kind of feel that is shifting is something that Alison said. And I kind of feel like people are understanding a little bit more why you can't just Google translate stuff, because they're in the same shoes that we are. So before, everyone was like, oh, just use Google, who cares, it's okay. And now it's like, oh, okay, well then I don't need designers because I can just use Lovable, right? Or, oh yeah, no, we don't need engineers anymore because I can just code it with Claude, right? I can just vibe code the entire platform and the entire product. And then they're like, no, 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 no. And when you talk with them about why you can't do that with localization, and you tell them, well, you're telling me that, but if I told you, let's code this with Claude, what would you say? Then they're like, okay, I get it. And then you're having a complete different type of conversation that we were having 3 years ago or 2 years ago, when we were the only people with the technology that was actually advanced enough for people to not understand that behind the technology there was a strong human muscle. And that's the way I feel about it. So that's in terms of languages. In terms of markets, it's a completely different story at Malt. So that's like a...
I think we'll get there. We want to hear your story, but it's going to be here in the next one. So we're going to talk about how to elevate. We talked about this and how to earn your seat when we talked about shifting. Both of you did. Giselle, this has to do a lot with why we invited you here. You mentioned it at the beginning, the boardroom rehearsal. For those who don't know, boardroom rehearsal was the first workshop that we organized with Powerling by Powerling, which is a group of industry leaders with whom we share ideas and have some special benefits that we can talk about later. But you were there in Montreal in that room with 20 other industry leaders from companies of all sizes, but mostly Silicon Valley. And the idea was I collected 3 videos from 3 industry leaders again who had elevated the conversation. We were there to challenge a statement that said translation is not a boardroom issue that has been running for the past 30 years. And we collected these videos and we divided you into groups, and each group had to select a person and do a pitch about why we can enter the boardroom and have this conversation. How do we do it? Your pitch was very complimented. It was really special. This is what Secure plays here among us. Not only that, but tell us about your experience and how did you elevate the conversation when you went back? Because that was the idea. When you went back on Monday, what was your experience and how did you implement those ideas at Sage?
Yeah, no, I loved the boardroom experience. So many of you have probably been to Lock World or Taos or some other conference, but for me, the boardroom pre-conference thing was my favorite part, actually. I love being hands-on with people and getting a lot of feedback right away. So a lot of the feedback I got, because I started very similar to many people of what's my problem? What am I trying to solve? I'm getting told to do all these things, and you had to shift all that thinking into what's the opportunity and what is going to land for someone that doesn't know anything about my day-to-day, doesn't know anything about my team, doesn't even know I exist probably, and have to shift that thinking to what the value message is for them and what that means for the business. So shifting from my team does this and I need this and all that sort of stuff towards here's the opportunity I see, here's the promises we made to the market, and here's how we can achieve those goals in the next 6 months with these resources. And so it was really helpful to hear that kind of feedback coming from just the team and the table around me, because again, grew the fastest in that workshop. So I recommend you attend Fabiano's well-crafted ideas and different things. So congrats to being here today.
So sweet. But tell us about your experience going back and doing the workshop yourself and doing with people. That's so much fun.
The workshop was great, and we shifted that messaging. My pitch was, again, I sit so I don't talk often about localization. Actually, I talk about markets, I talk about revenue, I talk about growth, I talk about how we scale that across every market, most of all. And so my pitch was about how we really, a trend lately has been a lot of product-led growth, and how we keep growing our current customer base into all of these new technologies that we're building and features that we're building, and partners that we're, companies that we're partnering with to provide richer functionality and capabilities. And so it was about how we do that across markets and what we need to make that happen, because it requires working with engineering. It requires working with product and getting on roadmaps. It's not just a problem you can solve by chucking more content at it. So it requires a lot of those kinds of investments into the platform level itself, and then making that scalable across the business. So on Monday, when I got back, I think I told my boss I have way too many ideas now, and probably 5 more schemes than I had before I left. I helped her make some slides for product-led growth, because she ended up being the executive sponsor on it. And then we've been trying to build and run this program with a lot of lessons learned and different things going on, because turns out marketing is a little bit slower than us in the product and engineering side. So we're trying to push marketing along and focus on their goals, but also focus on how do we create a platform that's far more advanced than waiting for emails going back and forth between people, and waiting for CSMs and account managers to talk to their customers and push a relationship along. So again, how do we make a customer feel like from the product itself they're able to know what steps are next and really grow from there in any market? And so I've spent a lot of time on that in the last 6 months. Even what I'll talk about later is going to be a lot about that.
This is wonderful. I'm so glad that it was so helpful. And speaking of, yes, go ahead.
Oh, and the other thing I did was when I got back, we were part of what my team does is we've been leading like AI upskilling across, like a program to upskill the organization. And we sit in experience design, but I forced everyone to listen to me talk about pitches for 30 minutes also, like Fabiano, and told all the leaders they need to come and learn how to, get money and be a professional pesterer as well.
Speaking of pestry, this is great. I wanted to see that. Speaking of pestry and talking to boss, Teresa, you had, thank you, Giselle, but Teresa, you had a project rejected, and then you turned it around and transformed. You led the largest initiative for 2025 at Malt with 45 people across 6 departments. Tell us about it, but particularly the wine and cheese story that I love so much.
You love that one. So I think here the most important thing is that when I joined Malt, so Malt is a freelancing marketplace. So we put freelancers in touch with clients. The reason why I'm explaining this is that we were very local oriented, and we had domains for each market in which we were operating. So when I joined Malt, I was so excited because part of my responsibilities as a localization manager, because nobody knew anything about localization. So they were like, this person here, she's going to open new markets. And I was so excited that was not a fight that I had to fight, that I sort of didn't want to ruin it for myself. So when I was opening these 3 markets in 2023, I was seeing so many issues with this. I was like, this is a huge investment. And really, like, we have no idea if these markets are going to actually be profitable or anything. But so I started to raise the concerns, but sort of like in a very soft way, because I thought, I don't want them to take this responsibility away from me. So I guess that's a learning lesson for everyone. The fact that you get something that you really like doesn't mean that you should be soft-spoken about it if you think it's not the right way to do it. So then I was like, you know what we should really do? I saw this document about Malt.com, International Marketplace. That's a project that Fabiano was talking about. Actually, if you go to Malt.com, that was me last year. Well, that was me from 2023, pestering all the way to the end of 2024, and then working on it the entire 2025. So basically, I saw this document about an international marketplace, and I was like, yes, this is it. This is what we need to do. And everyone that I asked, they were like, no, Teresa, no one has time for that. We're not going to do that. Just, you can stop pestering now. To the point that my manager at one point was like, Teresa, are you sure you want to keep putting energy into this? And I was like, yeah. I'm gonna keep going. So I got it rejected, like Fabiano said, and I think that's the most important lesson here is that I got it rejected like 20 times. But I was so convinced. I was like, no, but this makes sense. This is like I was really, really convinced about it. So I kept going, like I wouldn't let it go. And then eventually they created the global sales team. And I went to them because they had this really massive target. They were like, okay, from here until the end of the year, you have to generate this revenue. And the moment I saw it, I was like, these people are going to get it. So I went immediately to them and I sat down with the general manager and I was like, how do you feel about this target and the fact that you have to do it using local domains that are not global? And he told me something, and I told this to Giselle and Fabiano and Alison, and I will never forget this sentence because what he told me was like, Teresa, I feel like they told us we have to go to the moon, and they gave us a rowing boat. And there's no way, we need a rocket. Like, there's no way we're ever gonna get there. And then I showed them Malt.com, and I was like, would this help? And he was like, yeah, that would be the rocket. So that made us all push for that, and then eventually we got it going in 2025. I got the buy-in. The CPO put me in charge of the project, and it was really great. But this year in January, and this is the part that Fabiano absolutely loves. So in January, I was preparing for the second part of the project because we created an MVP for last year, so we needed to keep evolving it. So I was preparing the project for 2026, and then all of a sudden my manager was like, Teresa, there is pushback on whether we should keep going with the project this year. And I was like, what? But I already got it approved. I've been fighting for this for 3 years. What do you mean there is pushback? So it turned out that I had to fight all over again to keep the project going. So I had a meeting with the CEO, the CSO, the CTO, the CMO, all the what I usually call the C whatever O's. And don't tell this to my managers, but so with the C something O's, and I was getting pushback from some of the C something O's, specifically because of the resources that I was asking for. And I was trying to get the buy-in, and you will hear about this later on the pitch. But at some point in the last 15 minutes, the CEO started asking questions about localization and really to go away from the topic. And I was like, so tempted to go down the rabbit hole and talk about the things that I know and that I feel comfortable with and that I know about. And I had to really pull myself back, look at the 360, and I told him, look, Vincent, to the CEO, I was like, look, I have wine and cheese in the kitchen. If you want to talk about localization, when the meeting is over, I will sit here with you for hours, I will talk with you about localization for hours because there's nothing in the world that I enjoy more than talking about localization. But I need your approval for this project. And I need you to tell me that I have the resources and that you are validating what I'm asking for. And then we talk localization. And he was like, yeah, Teresa, absolutely approved. You have the buy-in, you have the resources, go ahead. And definitely yes, for the cheese and the wine, let's talk about localization later. But all this to say that you might be fighting for this for a long time and then get it and then have to fight again. And even when you are in the room making the decisions, you still have to fight that instinct to go down the paths that you know very well, to talk about operational and about the solutions, and pull yourself back and say, no, we're not here to talk about that. If you want to talk about specifics about the search and the way in which we do things, and fine, it's not now. Now I want your approval and I want those resources. So yeah, that was my story. Yes.
Thank you, Teresa. Now I have another very good story. So if someone, this is a recommended, if someone tells you that, well, this is not rocket science, you use Teresa's story and say, yeah, I did build a rocket and made it to the moon. Alison, Teresa and Giselle talked about their experience, and this is more or less what you have in effective executive messaging, the reports that will be distributed to everyone in this room. Tell us about the toolkit. What do we need to get into the room and stay there?
To get into the room and to stay there, well, you need effective messaging and effective story, and to be pitching things at the right level. And like Teresa and Giselle talked about, it's not cost per word. It is not turnaround time. It is all about what the executives and the stakeholders are being measured on, what's important to them. Are they thinking about revenue? Are they thinking about growth? Are they thinking about markets? Are they thinking about risk? So you need a story that resonates with them, that they can immediately grasp and see that the purpose of what you're asking is important to them and the company. Now, I have a story for you too, and this goes quite a few years back when we were trying to centralize language technology and processes for a very large enterprise. And you have to realize that you can probably not do it by yourself, especially if it's in a very big company. It's a localization leader by themselves cannot get through 8 or 9 or 10 layers of management to talk to the executives. You have to find people to work with. And at that time, for us, it was finance and it was procurement, because they understood how bringing it all together would work. Today, I would say you also need compliance, risk management, technology, IT, security, all those others, and you need to get together. But at the time, we had to have the opportunity to present the project to the C-level. We started off with a deck of something like 250 slides to tell the story in various ways. We had to get it down to just one slide and make it count, talk to the executives in a way that they immediately understood. They looked at that slide and said, well, this is obvious. Why aren't we doing it already? And hey, you've given us a 3-year timeline. We're giving you a 1.5 years to finish it. So being successful in your messaging, you have to be ready to get what you wish for, and then to be able to implement it in perhaps a reduced timeline, perhaps with a reduced budget. So build that into your messaging to begin with. But yeah, the bottom line is that you have to find that way of communicating that is meaningful to the people that you're talking to, asking for budget for, asking for their help with, or showing them that what you want to do is the right thing to do. And Teresa, you've been very, very strong at getting this done and going through those rejections and getting it because you believed in it. And I think this is what everybody in the localization industry believes in right now, is that yes, AI can be helpful, but it needs that guidance, it needs those guardrails, and it needs keeping under control. We all believe about it passionately. We should be able to make that apparent and to speak to the executives and people in control in a way that resonates with them, and that is like that one slide that says, well, why aren't we doing this already?
Great. Couldn't agree more. And thank you, Alison. Giselle and Teresa, I had specific questions for you, but I'm going to let this free. This is to be conversational. Do you want to chip in? Is there anything, because you've already talked about the toolkit, but I want to, if you have anything else to add, from your experience.
I love Teresa's part about being persistent and getting rejected 20 times, because I can't tell you how many times I talk to leaders, and I work in an enterprise, and it's surprising that I talk to leaders and they still say like, well, how do we get sign off on this? Like who says yes? And I say, well, that's your job. You have to go do that. And I love, Alison, that you said that it's also about like what you believe in, because I think people can give up too easy, kind of making their charters and their visions and their thises and their that's and all of that stuff. And I find myself spending a lot of time with leaders, just challenging them and saying, okay, pitch it again. Okay, pitch it again. Okay, keep going. Like, what's stopping you from doing this today? Why don't you just do it? Why are you waiting? What's stopping you? So they can really get to the meat of what they need to work on and talk about, instead of kind of waiting for permission. And I think sometimes I don't wait for permission. I just do things. So I would also add that sometimes you could just do something depending on what it is.
I love that you do this because I have serious rejection issues, so I would never survive this environment. Teresa, what do you
I think
have for us?
I would add two things here. One is I remember so it got to the point where they put in a document for 2024. So the plan for 2024, they wrote down what are we not going to do. And malt.com was in there because I had been so persistent that they kind of felt like we need to write this down because
It's not going to happen.
and I remember
You missed a memo. Sorry.
yeah, I got so upset. I remember telling my husband, you know what? That's it, because I am fighting this fight and I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for the company because this is more work for me. It's more work for me. I could be doing what I do, what I know. This is like such a big jump for me, and I'm still fighting here, and I'm fighting for what? And then if they don't want to do it, then whatever. That's it. I'm done. And my husband was like, right. And the day after, I was like, okay, so Malt.com. Here we go again. And he was like, right. So didn't you say that was it, that you were going to let it go? And I was like, no, I can't. I believe too strongly in this to just let it go. And I think that's like, the first thing is that you're also allowed to have those moments where you're like, you know what, that's it. Like, and I think that's also, it makes sense in a way, because in a company, you cannot do everything. And I will tell you this, when I heard about the pushback in January, I was not thrilled. I was very upset. I was like, again, I've been fighting for these 3 years, and now I have to fight for it again, and I have to get resources, and I knew it, blah, 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 blah. So I let it out. And then I sat down and I was like, okay, I need to get the buy-in for this because I believe in this. And when I came out of the conversation with the CEO and with the C-suite, I felt that maybe if I hadn't had that conversation, if no one had asked me to get the buy-in again, that I would have worked on it, of course, with passion and with energy, but maybe it would not have meant. It was a moment that told me you're going in the right direction, because we are validating again that you're right, and that this is what we need, and that this is the direction in which we have to go. And sometimes maybe that's not the case. Maybe you get there and you get the rejection, and then maybe it is because it really, objectively, that was the end of that project. And that's why companies have these checks where they will put in a document, that is how we're like, the only thing missing was my name. This sentence here is for Teresa, we're not doing Malt.com. And that's why you have those things. You have those documents where you're saying what you're not going to do. Also, because as a company, you have to decide and make these decisions. And like Giselle said, it's your job to make sure that your initiatives are selected to be moved forward. If they don't, it normally means that someone else was better at showing the impact of their initiative. Doesn't mean that your initiative wasn't good. It's just that somebody else was better at proving the impact of theirs.
Very good.
I wanted to add one more thing, actually. I was thinking about what Alison said about be careful what you wish for, if you will, and being prepared for like other ways that something might happen. So I remember I was fighting for a very long time about why we should be doing AI search fast. It should be like the first thing you do, a RAG search. Why can't we just build this tomorrow? Like, I think within 3 months, I was pestering my boss. We should do this tomorrow. I kept getting told, wait, engineering has to make a big blah, blah, blah decision, alignment, because that's kind of how it works at enterprises. You have to kind of wait, and the ownership has to be there and all these things and that stuff. So I was waiting, but I was like, at some point, I think I told her, I was feeling angsty, and I told her, I feel angsty. I'm ready to commit political suicide. She's like, hold on, please stop. Don't do that. And I was like, are you sure? Like, what's a little like, why not? And so I stopped, but it was a moment where it was careful what you wish for, because I did get what I want. We got to launch AI search as like our first AI feature. I got to be the first team that worked on it and all those things, but I didn't get to do it the way I wanted to do it. And then I felt like Teresa, where I was like, you know what? Why did I do all this fighting and all this work? And I don't even get to decide the way it's supposed to be done and all this stuff. And I felt so just mad about the whole thing. And I knew it was going to be multilingual. I had a whole roadmap. I had the whole feature like specced out and everything ahead of time. But it didn't happen the way that I wanted it to, even though it did happen. And so I think you're right, Alison. Like, it definitely can maybe not happen the way you want it to. It could happen faster than you want it to or are ready for, and you have to deliver no matter what. But I still found it to be one of the most rewarding experiences that I got to be there. And it really elevated content and language simultaneously to be an important contender in AI experiences. So it was good, but I was annoyed for a good 6 months the whole time working on it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well done. So we're approaching, and I'm going to run this a little bit faster because the conversation has been so engaging. I'm going to zoom out a bit and talk about, what we've been going through. I think going back to the theme of the webinar today. And remind everyone, how we are navigating into this new road and these fast changing times. Teresa will be on stage at Lock Road presenting her case. Verena from Preply talked at Gala a few weeks ago how they became a partner in steering the AI strategy in their company. Women Localization started a program called We Shape AI. I think, you saw what Giselle and Teresa and Alison is here to support the whole idea. I think we need, we are ripe to get back in control. And I know there has been a lot of changes, all of the layoffs, and we see some people here might be part of that. But I think we're ripe to get back control of the situation. I don't know whether this has been the case, whether the threat has been, around Giselle and Teresa at their companies, but it's there. And I think for years also we tried to convince leadership of, or trying to explain to people what localization was. And for a lay person, they would ask, what is localization? At the end, after all the explanation, oh yeah, translation. Okay, I got it. I think now, instead of going, fighting the tide, we are going towards the other direction and using artificial intelligence instead of using the terms that benefits us the most, which is large language models. We are the language people. So this is where I think we need to reinstate our place and our value in this new era. And as Alison said in her reports, remind people and occupy these spaces and show them that we are the language people and how important we are in this new times. Having said that, I'm going to skip the questions. I had a couple of questions and comments for unless anyone wants to comment, because I'm really excited to go into the next stage, which is the exercise. So similarly to what we did in Monterey, this is a little bit different because there it was very improv. Here we staged a little. So I asked Teresa and Giselle to prepare a pitch with a situation. They are in an elevator. The CEO comes in. The CEO asks a question, and around some of the issues that they're having, similarly to what Teresa was talking about. And they have 2 minutes. It's, going 5 floors up or down. They have 2 minutes to convince the CEO and to ask and make sure that he says as soon as he leaves the door, you should be in the next leadership meeting. Giselle, since you did this in Monterey, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I wrote something, so I'll see if it lands. But I will say, I took Fabiano's prompt very literally. So I'm imagining that, I don't know, the CEO is in town for some reason and we end up in the elevator together and he's talking about growing our current customer base and how we do that and why this is such a big opportunity for the company and top priority. So in this, I turn to him and I go, oh, you're trying to grow value for the existing customer base faster. And right now we have all the pieces to do that, but they're disjointed, they're disconnected, and they're manual. They're not operationalized for scale. We have data from 300,000 real customer questions. They're not just asking about errors and how to, they're looking for best practices, comparisons, next steps, examples. And those are the kinds of questions you would ask a CSM or the person that you're going to renew with on a daily basis or have continue your business interactions with us. We don't operationalize that. The insight sits outside of the product, outside of our AI experiences that we're investing in, and outside of our customer journey. So every single team is manually recreating this for every single product that we have right now. It doesn't scale and it delays our value realization for our customers and for our business. The opportunity is to turn all of that into a data-powered content orchestration layer, where those signals trigger guidance, messaging, and learning dynamically, whether a customer is onboarding for the first time or approaching a renewal, or just checking out a latest feature to see if it's something that they need and want to invest in for their business too. So that's how we move from static manual help and learning to a growth engine that customers use, and we use their intent to drive adoption, expansion, and retention. If we build it once with engineering, it becomes a shared capability across products and markets, not a repeated cost that we have to keep investing in over and over and rediscovering. I think it'd take 12 to 18 months, but we'd have to talk to engineering to figure out some more details.
Wonderful. Okay, why are you not in the next leadership meeting? You should be. Teresa, thank you, Giselle. Teresa, what is your pitch?
Okay, so my pitch, I'm going to give you a little bit of context, and I'm going to try to adapt to the elevator as well. Mine is very different because I guess I know my CEO very well by now. So I know that he is very straight to the point. So basically, just to give you some context before we go into the elevator, in January, Malt did an amazing beginning of the year event in a historical theater in Paris. And they put 3 main objectives for the year. And one of them, I'm not going to tell you which one it is because I'm going to use it for the pitch, but one of them is going to be important for us. So we get into the elevator, and then all of a sudden the CEO looks at me and says, oh, Teresa, by the way, did you know we are rethinking about, I don't think we're going to continue with Malt.com this year because there are so many competing priorities. And then I punch him in the face. No, I'm kidding. I'm like, what? No, I'll be like, what? No. So then I would be like, oh, that's very surprising to me, because remember in the theater 2 weeks ago when you put in the big screen in front of 500 Malters, that one of your 3 main targets for this year is that X% of our revenue comes from international markets. Is it correct? Was that number X%? Yes? Okay, so how are we going to do that with an MVP? Because I can guarantee you that Malt.com in 5 months is the 4th revenue generator domain, outperforming 5 domains that have been historically for 10 years at Malt. So if in 5 years we can be 4th, I can guarantee that in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 months, Malt.com can generate 100% of that target that you have put there on that theater for everyone to see. So if you're not going to invest in Malt.com, I would be very curious to know how you're going to hit that target, because Malt.com is the way in which you can hit that target, and there is no other way. And on top of that, by the way, we should talk about opening these other 2 new markets, because we are already seeing strong signals from Malt.com, from the data that we are gathering. And one of these markets that we have never operated in is our 4th revenue generator already. So tell me with whom I need to speak about this. And I know with whom he would say, because that's exactly what he said, because I told him this. So that we can get those two markets open as soon as possible, because we're already doing business with them. And that's my pitch. We are opening the markets this year, so I'm really happy about that as well. Yeah.
Alison, did you hear word counts, deadlines? Did you hear anything about the things that we should remove from our conversation? Give us a wrap.
I heard both our presenters here talking to their CEOs in very concise ways about things that really, really meant something to them. So it was relating to what they'd already projected, what they'd already stated was going to happen, and being able to convince them that, you know, language matters, and that this is the way it's got to, it needs to be done to achieve those targets. Now, if I was getting into the elevator with a CEO right now, I would be talking to them about, you know, we've already been really successful. If I'm talking about the entire enterprise, showing, you know, what we've been successful with in using AI and helping to generate revenue, more customer loyalty through being able to provide information, content, everything in those customers and prospects language, but that automating everything for low risk content is one thing. I would ask if I can meet with the compliance manager for the entire company to talk about the higher risk content and information that needs a human touch to it, because we do not want a mistranslation or a miscommunication. And I think communication is really important here. A miscommunication in a language, a culture, or even a tone of voice to bring a problem to the company in terms of brand, revenue, reputation, anything like that. So show off what is achievable with automation and AI, but also ask for that connection with risk management and making sure that everything works right for the company overall.
Thank you, Alison. I think you started touching on subjects that are very dear to me, which are language representation in large language models.
Yeah.
I think there are other subjects that we can talk about, digital sovereignty, and the latest, which is Gen Z is sabotaging AI in the work environment, which is just insane. And speaking of which, this is the theme of my panel with Sarah Schock from Powerling and Alex Sirac. We will be at Lock Road. Teresa will be there too. Alison will be running a workshop. Giselle, we'll meet you probably, hopefully, in Vancouver. Powerling will also be at Lock Road with a booth. I'll have my beautiful white sofa there doing interviews. So if you're around, come join us. Sofa, there is a sofa playlist on YouTube. Thank you so much, my guests. This was beautiful. I wanted to open the floor to Fabian, unless you all have a quick one-sentence recommendations from everyone in the room for what they should do on Monday, because there's a lot to digest and they can take the weekend to do it. So let's jump to Fabian. We can wrap with your recommendations. I'm sorry, I sprung this on you. Fabian, do we have questions from the chat? I don't know if Fabian
If not,
can hear us.
I can
Yes.
share a last thing that I find very important, and I'm trying to get into everywhere where I speak. I'm trying to say this because I find it so important. I kind of feel like AI is pushing us into a very competitive market. Localization has always been a beautiful industry where people really support each other. So I would say let's try to stay human, supportive, caring about each other, and not go into that competitive I would say, go down into that competitive mindset and try to really help each other out. We're all going through the same in our companies, or looking for a new job, or trying to adapt in the work that we do every day. And so let's try to stay human, because that's what we do best at localization, is to stay strong community that supports each other. So I would like to say that, because I'm trying to get it in every time I talk about this, because I find it so important, and that we really are going down a slippery slope these days with AI a little bit.
Yes, I know. And removed as much artificial as we can. Giselle, do you have a recommendation?
No, I agree with Teresa. Like, actually, I would say lean into your human side, if anything. The empathy, the building with each other, the storytelling. I work with people a lot on judgment lately, like building up judgment, because you can't say yes to everything, and neither can a business. So even your own ideas, you need to have a good lens on, if is this really a good idea? Should I really do this? And the more times you talk yourself into it, the more I think you'll believe in it too. So I would say build your judgment too, but lean into your human side overall.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you.
I would agree.
And Alison,
It's
you
all
want to
about
wrap?
being human. You've both summed it up really, really well. And I, for one, am fed up with hearing human in the loop. It's not human in the loop. It's human in the at the core. It's human centered. So humans.
Yes, yes, let's be humans. Everyone, thank you. I'm still open to questions, but I think we're good. It's 4:58. I think we're gonna end on time. Reach out to us if you have any questions. We hope to hear from you. We will follow up on the recording and the reports. And thank you so much, everyone. This is just the first of the series. There will be more. And I really thank my wonderful guest today. I hope to see you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.